Have you ever experienced an element on a coaster so intense, so forceful, and so brutal that you nearly blacked or grayed out? Well, for those of you who know what I'm talking about, this phenomenon of losing consciousness can usually happen between 4 and 6 Gs on roller coasters. But did you know that there was a supposed coaster in Japan that pulled upwards of 9 to 10 Gs? According to some conversations on Reddit, new and inexperienced riders would often come into the station completely knocked out or just entirely phased. But what about it was so intense, and why did it ultimately close? This is the story of perhaps the most intense roller coaster ever created, Loop Coaster. First, let me start off by saying, the information in this video is going to be mostly based on data found through the use of various math equations. And even then, the variables we're working with are only available from some scarce photos and videos. So with that being said, a lot of this isn't officially verified, but regardless, just take the educated guesses for what they're worth. Loop Coaster, located in Hyogo, Japan, opened in 1979 as the world's tallest roller coaster at a height of 193 feet. Although trains rarely actually reach this height, the added length of the track allowed for much faster, more efficient runs. Being a shuttle loop coaster, the ride featured one inversion, a vertical loop, in which riders would experience twice through. But what made the coaster really interesting was its high G nature. Around the time of its opening, it was infamous locally for its ability to knock out riders. Designed by Meisho Amusement Machines and built by Okamoto Company, we now know this was a result of its being a prototype. Loop Coaster was the predecessor to the better-known shuttle loops like Moonsault Scramble. And any educated enthusiast can tell you, Moonsault Scramble was perhaps one of the craziest and most downright insane coasters ever created. Considering Moonsault Scramble was also capable of knocking riders out at 6.5 Gs, I can only imagine the 9G experience on this thing. And speaking of the Gs, you may be asking how we calculated them or where we found the information since none of this is actually verified. And well, a majority of that help came from Reddit user My Name Isn't Jeffrey, and a video many people say has been altered to make it appear faster than the ride actually was. But regardless, here's what Jeffrey found. After making some extremely rudimentary assumptions, I tried to calculate the G-force for the loop. Someone here said the height was 193 feet, and looking at the video, it looks like the train was just short of that. He then assumed the center of the train was 175 feet, or 53 meters, and since he didn't have the actual data for how much friction the trains really caused, he decided to look at a coaster with a similar height and use its speed. This coaster was Great American Scream Machine at Six Flags Great Adventure, which was 173 feet tall and hit 68 miles per hour. He continues and says, "I'll say the train's going 60 miles per hour after it goes straight through the station for a bit." Next was the biggest estimation, the loop. The radius of the loop is hard to guess. The average height of a man in Japan is 1.71 meters, and just using that reference and a bit of guessing, he concluded the diameter of the loop to be 15 meters. Now plugging this all into the equation, acceleration equals velocity squared divided by the radius, gave us an acceleration of 102.6 meters per second squared. Divide that by 9.8, which is the force of gravity, and you'll get the answer in Gs to be 9.77 Gs. Of course, this is just one guess based on some pretty sketchy information, but as I continued scrolling through more Reddit comments, at least 3 other people concluded a similar number. This then raised the question in my head of, okay, so even if this thing did hit 9.8 Gs, whatever even happened to it? And according to RCDB, in May of 2000, the ride closed permanently, but after doing some checking on Google Earth, I noticed that half of the ride was still there. I found this to be extremely odd and assumed it was just a glitch with the server, but funny thing is, half of it really was removed in 2006. The loop and the reverse point on the loop side were both taken out, while the station and the other reverse point still remain for whatever reason. It does appear the station is still being used for storage, but while the other half is still standing, I really have no idea why, other than maybe the cost to remove it just wasn't worth it. Anyways, that's just kind of my take and presentation on what in my opinion was potentially the most intense coaster ever created. I want to ask you guys, do you believe it's possible this thing really hit 9 Gs? And do you really believe these stories? Like, it's honestly pretty far-fetched, but there's been some pretty crazy stuff, and considering Meisho Amusement Machines also built Moonsault Scramble, I wouldn't be surprised. Let us know in the comments. Thanks again all so much for tuning in, and don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed today's video. I'll be here Thursday for another one, and if y'all have any suggestions, you can leave those down below too. But until then, we'll see you guys in a few days, and I appreciate all you're doing for us. See ya.